The Necro is OP no matter its level. Let's go over how we can beat the Tormented Echo of Varshan with a solo under-leveled Necro. You can see here that the Tormented Echo of Varshan is the World Tier 4 version, and he is level 80. My Necro is only level 64, which means I'm probably also under-geared for the fight. Let's go over the build while you can see my Necro going around, trying to figure out the mechanics of the fight. The first element we need to address is the resource. I use my essence to cast Blight, but I put absolutely nothing in the gear, skills or paragon points to get more resource in any way, or to boost my core skill damage. The real resource of my build is actually corpses, as this is mostly a corpse explosion build. It was not optimized for bosses. In fact, a boss is actually the worst possible scenario for the build, yet I will succeed. Since there isn't any trash enemies in the fight, it is very difficult to get corpses. I spawn them in two very crucial ways. The first way I spawn corpses is by actively casting Ghastly Blood Mist. The second way I spawn corpses if passively, though hitting the boss and triggering the Hued Flesh passive skill. Putting 3 points in there is mandatory. Without it, you get no resource against bosses. Now, how do we convert these corpses into damage? The goal is to put out enough hits on the boss, to trigger enough lucky hit to spawn corpses faster than the puddles from corpse explosion are going away. Once this happens, we can use corpse explosion repeatedly to deal exponentially more damage over time. You will see soon that when this happens, I can simply spam the corpse explosion button right underneath Varshan and it's melting his health until he shields himself again. In order for this to work, you need to use Blighted Corpse Explosion. This is your main source of damage, so you need to put 5 points into it. I am currently wearing the unique gloves called Howl from Below, but they are not mandatory at all, especially for a boss fight. I use the Sacrilegious Vicious Heart on this build, which is great when fighting huge packs of enemies, but it's bad for bosses. There isn't many corpses, and we want to avoid the heart using the corpses to cast our attacks with lesser damage output. So we need to really spam the corpse explosion button when we get to finally spawn corpses from Hued Flesh. The corpse tendril skill can be useful pull in the elites, and you can go for the blood orb version or the vulnerable version, depending if you need more damage or more healing. Blood Mist also serves the purpose of shielding us for 3 seconds, which allows us to avoid the huge AoE attack. It needs to be maxed to lower its cooldown, but I did not bother to equip any legendary aspect to give it any special effect. The golem serves many purposes. First, it's an extra target for the enemies. Second, it's the blood golem that will take 15% of damage done to the Necro. Third, whenever I cast Bone Storm, there will be one around the golem as well. The other minions are sacrificed, for increased shadow damage and increased damage to vulnerable enemies. That synergizes well with Corpse Tendrils if you pick the version who makes enemies vulnerable, Plagued Corpse Tendrils. If you want to use minions, they need to be really tough, because otherwise they would likely die. When they die, they will then take up a spot on your skill bar for nothing, or they will take corpses to revive them. If they aren't tough enough, you'll just burn through corpses to revive useless minions instead of putting out damage. The choice is up to you. In my case, sacrificing them provides me a lot more toughness through the standalone passive talent. Now it's time to talk about Bone Storm. I put the 3 points into it, so it is another great source of damage reduction. I use the Osseous Gale legendary aspect on a 2-hand weapon to double its effect. In my case, that allows Bone Storm to consume up to 8 corpses to increase its duration by 18 seconds. Then here is another key aspect that helps a lot, Abhorrent Decrepify. It is on autocast, thanks to the brutal heart of the Decrepit aura. You get a Decrepify aura as soon as 1 to 4 enemies are at close range. Needless to say that for a boss fight, the ideal is to autocast it when only 1 enemy is close. This aura will allow to efficiently reduce the cooldowns of Bone Storm and Blood Mist, to provide us with more reliable toughness, damage reduction from the boss, debuff, immunity, etc. If this wasn't a boss fight, Bone Storm could stay up permanently that way. Everything synergizes together. I also have one other legendary aspect on my build that helps a lot, the aspect of Shielding Storm. This provides us with a small barrier that constantly renews itself, cancelling every small hits we take, instead of accumulating this damage on our health. We only need to worry about big hits. We deal with this by casting Blood Mist during the big AoE attack. Since the damage of the Necro is already insane, we prioritize toughness a lot in order to survive in World Tier 4. There is one last piece of the build that makes a big difference, the Brutal Heart of Revenge, which in my case, suppresses 15% of incoming damage. This is it. Anything else I got on the build isn't mandatory or directly making an important difference. You can pick what makes sense to you, as per your preference or your available gear. At this point in the fight, I figured out the mechanics. I know to use my Blood Mist when he does the big AoE attack, and I know I need to kill the elites when he shields himself. All that is left is to create the cycle of creating corpses and spamming corpse explosion at the right time to totally melt him. So here you have it. You can do it too. I am totally convinced you could also achieve it with a Bone Spear build and maybe a full minion build as long as you have enough damage reduction piled up. What level were you when you beat him? And what kind of build did you use? Let us know in the comments. On the left side on the screen are the skills I use for the different mechanics until he is dead. Once I figured it out, beating him was very easy with this build. Enjoy the rest of the fight. So this is it. See you around in Sanctuary.